My name's Doug Gibbons, and my topic was legumes, things like beans and lentil, and how they have a mitigating impact and an effect around the world on disease. So I went to Michigan State University, graduated in 2006, and I studied nutritional sciences, which was the crux and the foundation for my scholarship around the world. It meant a lot to me just to network through not only my professors, but again, friends of my professors around the world. Sure, at the time I was researching within laboratory studies over at Michigan State University within the Nutritional Sciences Department, looking primarily at colon cancer in murine or mouse models. So most of that study led again to my interest not only in the Circumnavigator's grant of legumes, but also really the rest of my career in terms of research, development, diagnostics, and all the way through what I'm doing today, which is genomics, which is basically the study of DNA and how that has an impact on phenotype. The whole process was interesting, right? I mean, it was, the Michigan chapter. So it was comprised of students from 3 universities primarily. So University of Michigan, Michigan State, and Wayne State University. So at some point, I linked up with some of the former grantee winners as well as the foundational members of the Michigan chapter, and they brought to my attention the opportunity for this grant. At that point, I was pretty heavily immersed in side projects and research studies at Michigan State, and so I thought, what better time than now and than then to essentially utilize those connections to apply for the grant and really lean on some of the research that I was doing at Michigan State and some of the collaborators around the world through Michigan State and the Nutritional Sciences Department. I'll never forget the Circumnavigators Club, the Michigan chapter was so open-armed. They embraced me. They were proud of me. They encouraged me. They provided empathy. They provided firsthand experiences of other grantee winners on what maybe to do and maybe what to avoid. The relationship has really been heartfelt from the get-go, and I'll be the first to admit we don't stay in touch as often as I'd like, but truth be told, I'll never forget their generosity, and I'll never forget the opportunity that I had to present in front of them based on the trip around the world, and really a unique subject matter that I don't know too many other grant winners have touched on. Legumes and how that had a mitigating and positive impact. Connected with some PIs or primary investigators within the University of West Indies. So the University of West Indies is in the heart of Kingston, Jamaica. And, I networked through my department of nutritional sciences to find a researcher that was heavily immersed in studies surrounding liquid chromatography, ion chromatography, and just some of the separation techniques on different proteins that are involved in things like legumes, beans, lentils, and how those separate out from a chemistry standpoint. So really at the end of the day, it was all about connections through Michigan State and the Nutritional Sciences Department. And moreover, I think those connections led me to, a lifelong yearning for travel and really research surrounding everything from cancer all the way through medical device research studies that I've conducted here in the UK was interesting. There was a primary investigator at the UK within Norwich. If I remember correctly, he was very heavily involved in some nutritional studies surrounding different mitigating impacts of plant-based foods. And so from that standpoint, I thought, what better person to reach out to than that? And he turned out to be a great key opinion leader within the space. It gave me some, maybe not as intimate of a learning experience as I received at University of West Indies, but he gave me, a good foothold and grasp on maybe the 10,000-foot view of plant-based foods supplementing diets around the world from a protein standpoint. Yeah, the Switzerland part was very timely. I'll put it to you that way. So Michigan State, beyond the amazing Nutritional Sciences Department, also has a very highly esteemed study abroad program with many, many countries, hundreds probably at this point. Through the Nutritional Sciences Department, we had a sister program known as Food Science, and the Food Science Department put on that semester or that summer, very timely, a study abroad that would be visiting the FAO, Food and Agriculture Organization, the WTO, the World Trade Organization, and the WHO, the World Health Organization. So as fortuitous as you can imagine this would be, it was just perfect timing, and I was able to link up with the study abroad program. So it was great. We got to sit in on member conferences at FAO, as well as visiting some of the large forums that you see and seminar series that you see at the WHO, World Health Organization, within Geneva. So it was, I would say, literally a once in a lifetime opportunity to not only be within the confines of some of those very esteemed programs and institutions, but also an impactful way to look at not only nutritional sciences in my department, but also the way the food science department, and more on a chemical basis, how that impacted, again, legumes and some of the powerful impacts on supplemental diets around the world. Yeah, so Tanzania, it was a direct researcher that was researching, a direct connection through a researcher researching at Michigan State. He was a postdoc within the laboratory of Dr. Maurice Bennick. And to this day, I remember Theo, and Theo hailed from Tanzania and had ongoing studies, again, within the discipline of legumes, and how that had different impacts from a phytochemical standpoint on colon cancer. And so what happened is, I don't know if it was every summer or every other summer, he happened to go back to his home country of Tanzania. And of course, the Michigan State branch of nutritional sciences has a study abroad program now within that same sector where Theo's from. So I guess you could put it that I kind of paved the way a bit for Michigan State going down to Tanzania with the help of course, Dale Ramsos and Dr. Maurice Bennick. And so through Theo, Dr. Bennick, and Dr. Ramsos, I was able to spend time with Theo on site, where the implementation of some of these diets were taking place within orphanages. So it's a very sad fact, but at the time, and I'm sure even to this day, a majority of the children within these orphanages lose their parents to HIV/AIDS epidemic. And I know that was the case when I was there. So what happens is they supplement diets within these the children's group to make sure that they maintain a healthy body weight and body mass. Yeah, that was great. That was a side project through a foundational grant member, who again would have been one of the primary members funding my grant. So this would have been one of the stops that outside of core research that I was conducting, I met with one of the foundational members, and he showed me around, again, the Bangkok area, invited me into his home, filled me in more than anything on the circumnavigators. Yeah, so the UAE was a very interesting stop. Again, very similarly, there was a foundational grant member there that I had dinner with. And the beautiful part about the Circumnavigators grant is you get to travel to places that you might never otherwise think you might go to. And, call it a quick stop, call it a layover, but I was there for a matter of 48 hours, and I'll never forget being able to swim in the Persian Gulf. At the time, I think it was around 99 degrees. Some other highlights there was, again, a dinner and enlightenment through a foundational member of the Circumnavigators grant and Circumnavigators Club that lived in UAE. And we were able to visit some really cool sites around the area and learn, that was one area that really introduced me to, again, Muslim culture, different ways. And, I'll never forget, and I'll always be thankful, even to this day. Recently, I traveled to Turkey, to Morocco, and these other Muslim dominated countries. And really that time in UAE paved the way for a lifelong journey of traveling. Yeah, South Korea boasts just so much wealth of knowledge around the nutritional sciences domain. And within the confines of South Korea, I was able to look up 2 to 3 primary investigators that were involved in very similar studies surrounding plant-based proteins and supplementation within diets. And they found that, again, very similar to the African regions, that legumes, beans, lentils, other staples like that played a major role in maintaining a healthy BMI amongst individuals that may otherwise be prone to malnutrition. So yeah, I'll never forget Singapore. I think the primary memory I have of Singapore outside of the research and the talking was, again, the communication and the love and passion for some of these local festivals. I'll never, it'll never be lost on me the time that I first tried, and probably the first and only time, tried the fruit durian. The type of fruit that will smell up cabs. They won't let you within the 20 feet of a cab if you have the fruit, let alone a whole citywide festival. And so that's the one memory that sticks out to me, is meeting with a Circumnavigators Foundation member and going to a city block-wide festival that was surrounded and centered upon the durian fruit. The most pungent smell you can only imagine. And I remember the laughs that we had, and just seeing the reaction, like a Westerner like me trying their fruit. And yeah, it was just a great time, a great insight as well into the Asian branch and the Asian sector of the Circumnavigators Club. Yeah, ultimately the research was conducted around the world, and I would never in a million years had the opportunity, been blessed with the opportunity to see it firsthand. So at the time I was studying at Michigan State Nutritional Sciences, and it's one thing to read books, be quizzed, go through material, talk with colleagues and students alike. That's all fine and well. But the second that you go into the confines of somewhere like Tanzania and see a firsthand impact on ash measurements, on Keldal measurements, on the Soxlet method, seeing these firsthand, how they're implemented in a third world country like Tanzania to make a difference, right? I mean, not only had these children, lost the majority of their parents to the HIV/AIDS epidemic, but they were going through malnutrition like I've never seen before. And the mere fact that we could rely on something as economical as a staple like legumes was something I'll never forget. And I think just the overall first world and firsthand impact of seeing that, will never be lost on me, and really took my studies one step further to not only, articulate what I've learned through reading chapter books, but also I've seen it firsthand. So I think that's really, the one thing that I'll never forget. Yeah, the following academic year, I would say I was more motivated. So, I was changed for a lifetime after that trip through the Circumnavigators grant. So to put it mildly, the next semester and the next year of studies had more meaning, had more impact. And I could see the way that something in, a simple laboratory study at Michigan State University has benefits across the world. So an eye-opener for one, something that made me humble and very, very much appreciate the education that I received from Michigan State. And lastly, the ultimate motivation to do the best that I can within the academic subjects that the Circumnavigators Club had a huge impact on my whole career. Right after I graduated from Michigan State within nutritional sciences, I was able to land my first full-time job at Wayne State in a laboratory on the histological studies for murine models. And without my Michigan State education, of course, the research that I conducted at Michigan State, I would not be able to land that job at the time. And I used that Wayne State job as a stepping stone into arguably one of the best biotech arenas in all the world, and that's South San Francisco, California, where I worked for a biotech company where we set forth the goal of developing the very first immunotherapy for prostate cancer, which we were able to do successfully, which was a huge feat. And it allowed me the opportunity to get top tier publications within cancer research journals. And along the way, we were able to go all the way through phase 3 and almost made it through phase 3 trials before they realized and determined, the FDA that is, that Taxotere, the primary treatment for prostate cancer at the time, was still more efficacious than the immunotherapy we were developing. So the next stage was a move from California to Minneapolis, where I landed a job with Roche Tissue Diagnostics. And I was able to train pathologists and histologists all around the country, and even in Canada, the basis of biological markers, so what we call biomarkers, and how those biomarkers play a role in determining your course of treatment, as well as your diagnosis of a particular disease, let's say cancer. So I was able to do that and work with pathologists all around North America, managed a team. And that was the job that really got me into more of a technical sales. And I was able to brand myself as not only a scientist, which I was and had been, but now, of course, the business of science. So I was able to obtain my Master's of Business Administration, so my MBA from Northeastern University, which again was really enabled by the research grant, because they were able to see some of the work that I did at Michigan State, and more than just a feather in the cap, they knew that I was with it for the right reason. So obviously my next step of education with the MBA only helped me develop that business of science brand. To this day, I maintain that, and helps me day in and day out as far as the business savviness. And now I call on some of the sharpest researchers and primary investigators all around the Midwest, working on everything from bovine genomics all the way through what we call pharmacogenomics. So really tailoring in treatments for your DNA. And the future of what we're doing is coming up with, polygenic risk scores, let's say, that based on your DNA, you're more prone or less prone to have a certain condition or a disease based on your genetic makeup. So to my core, I'll always have science. And then of course, the business side is always there, but the Circumnavigators Club allowed me really, a well-rounded means to communicate all across the world from a business sense. To this day, I have a lot of other researchers that I engage with that I always bring up my Circumnavigators grant, and they're pretty impressed and always like to pick my brain on some of the research at not only the Tanzanian orphanage, but also impact the World Health Organization, the FAO, and so many of these other groups that have had, really a primary stage on the world's, the world's TV, if you will, with the whole COVID epidemic and pandemic that we're going through. And really, nutrition plays such a huge role in outcomes and prognosis of COVID-19. At that time, I think my core values and beliefs were pretty narrow. So it opened the blinders up. Once I go from, a Midwestern Michigan kid, all of a sudden I've traveled for a matter of weeks around the world. It opened up, a passion for traveling, a passion for humanity, a drive and a push to make a difference in the world. And I think to this day, I wouldn't be the same without that grant, because it pushed me into a direction of my career, which was from the core cancer research all the way through diagnostic procedures, finding you or your loved one a proper diagnosis for cancer in a reasonable amount of time. I've worked on, again, medical device studies all the way through what I'm doing today, which is genomics and pairing patient DNA with their metabolizer status in order for them to have the most tailored medicine for their bodies. So yeah, it definitely had an impact on my core. Live in the moment. My biggest piece of advice is live in the moment, enjoy every minute of the trip, plan, network. Never underestimate the ability of your mentors to have other friends within the industry that can help you get around the world. And maybe it's not even an older generation. Maybe it's your peers. Maybe it's other colleagues. The whole point is really stretch your limits, never settle, and reach for the outer boundaries, literally around the world, to never miss a moment or a destination that you might want to go to, because you never know when you will ever be back there. So those would be the advice that I'd give them. What does the grant mean? Why was it founded? And the Circumnavigators Club, what does it stand for? And I think the one thing that resonates to me even all these years later, is that the Circumnavigators grant is a way for outreach. It's a way to branch and to connect individuals to other individuals around the world by spreading the good word of travel. And that seeing a friendly smile halfway across the world doesn't mean anything. It means everything. And I think that's the one thing that I've taken through now around 35 countries that I've visited, is something as simple as a friendly gesture, a friendly smile, regardless of your communication, regardless if you speak the same language, it just goes so far that all of us are connected around the world through mankind and positive gestures and good deeds. It allows you to stretch your limits. It allows you to think outside the box on having an impact, not only within your own community, but all around the world. I mean, through my grant, I never would have imagined the people that I met, the impact that I've had, and of course, the impact that, again, I owe all of my gratitude to my mentors and my primary investigators. And it really provides meaning behind what we do on a local level and puts it on a global aspect, a global realm. It's a one-of-a-kind opportunity to affiliate with an organization that has outreach all around the world, that likes to promote travel, good deeds, humanity, and an open and warm heart. If any of those facets appeal to you as an individual and you like to travel, I think it's the organization. I've always described the Circumnavigators Club as promoting good deeds, promoting an open and warm heart of their motto. And it couldn't be more true. Through my experiences and the folks that I've met around the world that were members of the Circumnavigators Club, they were very, very warm and very welcoming into their local community, and would really do anything for you, an outsider at the time, really to assimilate into their confines, their community. So it's one thing to preach the motto, to read the motto, but it's a whole nother thing to live the motto. And I can attest that the circumnavigators all around the world live it each and every day. I've looked in the past at former grant winners and some of the topics, and to say that I'm humbled to be a part of that list is an understatement. So first and foremost, gratitude comes to mind. So I'm very thankful to be a part of that group, that very elite group. And the second is, I think I'm looking forward to the future. I mean, 50 years is great, but another 50 years is up and coming. And so what can we do now to have an impact and to preach the good word to some of the next grant winners that might be future scientists, might be future lawyers, might be future politicians, all based, or a part of their future is based upon that Circumnavigators grant. And so that's really what, that really enlightens me and really motivates me to continue. It's important to invest in the youth, because without those youth, ailments that we face today might never go away. And I have a firsthand experience with cancer research. I've worked around that field for the better part of 15 years. And yes, we're making some strides, but without the youth of today, tomorrow's future isn't promised with some of the emerging diseases and ailments around the world.